So it's Monday, which means it's time for the OHL Power Rankings video on the channel. This is the Power Rankings that I put together. I base it off the results from every night, and I compile a list and see what my formula comes up with. So there is some movement here, so buckle up and get ready for this one. We're going to start off with number 20. It's the Ottawa 67s. They dropped one spot this week, and for Ottawa, they had a 1-2 record and they're 3-3, but they did wrap it up with a win in Guelph. Mind you, it was in a shootout. The 67s, if they're going to make the playoffs, they really need to start stringing some points together. They're 2-10 over their last 10 games, still just 1 point ahead of North Bay for that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. They also lost Luca Pinelli in that game against Guelph. He had a match penalty for a check to the head in that hockey game, so I would imagine a suspension is incoming here for Pinelli, who, of course, leads the team in scoring. So that's going to be a tough break here for the Ottawa 67s going forward. But man, oh man, it's been a difficult watch recently with the 67s team holding on to that last playoff spot. We'll see what this team can do going forward because it's a challenging week ahead for them. It starts Wednesday at home against the Oshawa Generals, and then Friday they will be in Oshawa, and then Sunday they're home to the Flint Firebirds. At number 19, I have the Sioux Greyhounds, who are down 2 spots this week. It was a rough go for Sault Ste. Marie. 0-2-1 was the record, but things were off to a promising start. They lost in a shootout to Kitchener, but that was a 15-round shootout. Quite remarkable there between the Rangers and the Greyhounds. But keeping a lead has also been an issue of late for Sault Ste. Marie. They were up 2-0 in their games against Kitchener and Saginaw, but in both those games, of course, falling short. So for the Sioux, they're 3-5-1-1 over their last 10 games. And their hold on the final playoff spot in the Western Conference, it has dissolved down to just 2 points. Remember, the Greyhounds, they were up as much as 8 points up on Owen Sound and Guelph. And now with their recent struggles, the Attack right there with them. So they need to figure out how to get those leads and hold on to it. This week, 3 games on the road for the Sioux. They're in North Bay on Thursday. Saturday, they travel to Barrie. And then on Sunday, they're in Oshawa. At number 18, I have the North Bay Battalion. They're down 2 spots this week. It kind of feels like we have a turtle derby going on right now for that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. 1 point separates North Bay from the Ottawa 67s. And for the Battalion, they had a 1-2 record last week. It was a big shootout win against the Niagara IceDogs yesterday. But for North Bay, they're 4-6 over their last 10 games, and they have 2 games in hand on Ottawa. So it feels like they have the inside track when it comes to that playoff spot, but they just need to get some wins, very much like Ottawa. String some points together and try and secure that 8th spot. But man, oh man, it's tough. It's tough going right now at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings. And for the Battalion this week, they have 3 games. First on Thursday, they're home to Sioux. Friday, they visit the Guelph Storm, and then Saturday, they're playing the Owen Sound Attack. So 3 teams near the bottom of the Western Conference standings, but we'll see what happens here for the Battalion as they try and get that final playoff spot in the East. At number 17, I have the Brampton Steelheads. They dropped 4 spots this week. Coming out of the World Juniors, I was expecting Brampton to be one of the better teams in the second half. They've got the talent. They got the goaltending. It just feels like they've stalled. I'm really surprised with the way the Brampton Steelheads have been playing. They went 1-2 last week. They won in Peterborough before losing at home to the Petes, and then they lost on the road to the Owen Sound Attack. Both of those teams that they lost to are on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff picture in their respective conferences. So those losses are a little concerning here for the Brampton Steelheads. I don't think Brampton is at risk of missing the playoffs this year, but home ice in the first round is becoming less likely as they're now down to 21 games remaining in the regular season schedule. So this team, they really need to dig deep here and try and figure out their identity and how this team is going to come together and challenge for the Eastern Conference like we expected at the start of the regular season. Now, coming up this week, just 2 games at home. Friday, they host the Erie Otters, and then Saturday, they're home to the Kingston Frontenacs. At number 16, I have the Owen Sound Attack. They moved up 4 positions this week, and it was a solid week for the Attack. 2-0-1 was their record, and that overtime loss to the Erie Otters, Owen Sound was right with them. And Pierce Bowie, He's been playing some stellar hockey of late. The rookie forward, I think he's showing what he's capable of going forward. He's going to be a lot of fun to follow at the Bayshore. He now has 6 goals over his last 4 games for Bowie. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I didn't expect Owen Sound maybe challenge for a playoff spot. I figured their focus is on next season, but right now the struggle's up in Sault Ste. Marie. They're now 2 points out of that 8th seed, and who knows? Maybe we could be talking about playoff hockey in the city of Owen Sound this year. Coming up, they're in Kitchener on Friday. Saturday, they're home to North Bay. And then Sunday, they're home to the Kingston Frontenacs. At number 15, I have the Guelph Storm. No change for them from last week. The Storm, or I guess, should I say the Royal City Jockstraps, that's what they called themselves over the weekend. They're wearing those specialty jerseys. They look sharp. They kind of reminded me of the Owen Sound Grays jerseys that Owen Sound wore last year. The only thing is the screen printed jerseys. I'm not a big fan of them. I know it's expensive to create a jersey with the embroidered logo and whatnot, but they are on the right track, I feel. It'd be nice to see more barber poles in the OHL, especially that color mix that Guelph had. But still, this Storm team, they went 0-1-1 last week, and this is a team that showed they weren't going down without a fight. They're the youngest team in the OHL, and Charlie Paquette, he's the veteran leader this team needs. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points over his last 3 games. So Paquette really stepping up here for the Storm. And coming up this week, they're in Erie on Tuesday. Friday, they're home to North Bay. And then Saturday, they're home to Saginaw. At number 14, I have the Peterborough Petes. They're up 4 positions this week. It was a great week for the Petes. They went 2-1, wins over Brampton and Oshawa. This team, no pressure. And it shows with the way they're playing. I didn't expect the Petes to make the playoffs this year, but with Ottawa and North Bay involved in that Turtle Derby for that 8th seed in the East, the Petes, they're now 7 points out of a playoff spot. 5-4, 0-1 is their record over the last 10 games. They have that outside chance to maybe make the playoffs. I might do a video just doing more of a deep dive into the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, because the Peterborough Petes, with the way they're playing, might make it very fascinating to follow as to who will get that final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Now, coming up this week for Peterborough, they're home to Flint on Thursday. They visit London on Friday, and then they're in Sarnia on Saturday. At number 13, I have the Niagara IceDogs. They dropped 3 spots this week. They only played 2 games, but both of those were losses in extra time. It was an overtime loss in Barrie, and then a shootout loss in North Bay. They still managed those 2 points, and they're 5 points behind Barrie for first in the Central Division. Kevin He, of course, he's been out due to suspension, so him having He back in the lineup will help this Niagara group, try and charge up the Eastern Conference standings. But still, this is a very fun team to follow. They've got a very bright future. Obviously, this is a learning experience for them, trying to get back into the postseason since 2019. And I think fans in St. Catharines expect this team to make some noise over the next couple of seasons. This is a really good group. And, home ice, I think, is very possible in the first round of the playoffs for this team. Now, coming up Friday, they're home to Sudbury, and then they're home to Kitchener on Saturday. At number 12, I have the Flint Firebirds. No change from last week. For Flint, it started off great. They had a 5-1 win on the road against the Windsor Spitfires, then lost in a shootout to Kitchener, and then a 7-4 loss to Kingston. So Flint, if they're going to challenge in the West, they really need to figure out their specialty teams. 14.3% is their success rate on the power play in the OHL, which is 18th overall in the league. And their penalty kill is operating at 74.7%, which is also 18th. So the Firebirds, they've got room to improve, and we'll see what they can do over this final stretch of games. Because coming up Thursday, they will be in Peterborough. Friday, they're in Kingston, and then Sunday in Ottawa. So they're making that trip through the East Division this week. At number 11, the Sudbury Wolves. No change for them from last week. So the good for the Sudbury Wolves, they won at home 8-3 over North Bay after losing the previous game. But then the bad, they lost 9-3 to Brantford. It was an ugly loss yesterday. And the Wolves, they were right there challenging for top spot in the Central Division, but now they're 3-7 over their last 10 games, 14 points back of Barrie. So it's been very tough going right now for the Sudbury Wolves hockey team. And maybe it's the chemistry. Of course, they added Muse and Roberts at the trade deadline, so maybe they're still trying to figure things out. But they need to turn it around quickly if they're going to maybe challenge for home ice advantage in the playoffs. And this week, they're on the road for 3. It starts Wednesday in Brantford, Friday they're in Niagara, and then Saturday they visit the Erie Otters. At number 10, I have the Erie Otters. They are down 3 spots from last week. And Erie, they're another team that's been having a hard time finding their way. Of course, the off-ice drama with Stan Butler was resolved this week as he was let go by the team. But they went 1-2 on their 3-game road trip last week. That lone win was in overtime against Owen Sound, where Martin Mishiak was the hero in that one. But the Attack, they didn't make that an easy win for the Erie Otters. So despite their recent struggles, Erie, they're still just 2 points back of Saginaw for 4th in the Western Conference standings. So home ice advantage in the playoffs, still a possibility for this team, but I just feel like this team is out of sync right now. So hopefully they can turn things around. This week, they're home to Guelph on Tuesday. Friday, they visit Brampton. And then Saturday, they're home to the Sudbury Wolves. At number 9, I have the Saginaw Spirit. 5 positions higher than last week. They're the biggest movers. They went 2-0 last week. That included a 5-4 win over Kitchener and then a come-from-behind win over the Sioux where they put up 5 unanswered goals. So very impressive from the offensive side of things. Now Saginaw, they already have a potent offense, but it got an extra boost last week with the arrival of Igor Sherenshov. I still have to figure out a proper way to pronounce that one. But anyways, he was sent down by the San Jose Sharks. He started the year with that injury, and he fit in quite nicely. In 2 games, 3 goals and an assist, 4 points. So that offense, maybe this is the turning point this team needed. They're 6-3, 0-1 over their last 10 games. So let's see where Saginaw goes from here. The Spirit team, they wanted to contend with Misa and Perek again this year. They made that known at the trade deadline, and we could see this team make some noise in this final stretch. Now for Saginaw, they're in Windsor on Wednesday, Brantford on Friday, and then they travel to Guelph on Saturday. So a bit of a tough road trip here coming up for the Saginaw Spirit. At number 8, I have the Sarnia Sting. They're up 1 position this week. It was another solid week for Sarnia. This Sting team, 2-1, and they're 3-3. They also had the lead against Kingston in that game yesterday before the Frontenacs surged back. So I do like the look of the Sarnia Sting team right now. They're 6-2, 1-1 over their last 10 games. Lucas Fischer, he has been playing probably his best hockey this season. He's right now riding a 6-game point streak as he's helping this team just continue to be competitive in the Western Conference. Just 2 games this week for Sarnia. They're in Windsor on Friday and then home to Peterborough on Saturday. At number 7, I have the Barrie Colts. They're up 1 position this week. For Barrie, they were 2-0-1 and they're 3-3, with penalties being a bit of an issue in the game against Oshawa and also a bit in the game against the Niagara IceDogs. But they lost in overtime to Oshawa and then won in overtime against the IceDogs, so not too shabby. The Barrie Colts right now, they're on an 8-game point streak, so they're getting the job done. They do have a 2-point lead over Kingston for first in the Eastern Conference standings and a 5-point lead over Niagara for first in the Central Division. And of course, we've got a huge matchup on Tuesday. Barrie home to Kingston. This is the makeup game from the one that was snowed out back in January. So that's going to be a huge matchup. And then Saturday, they're home to the Sioux Greyhounds. At number 6, I have the Kitchener Rangers. They're down 3 spots this week. And I know there were some who were surprised last week. I didn't have Kitchener at number 1 after they had that win over the London Knights. But I was figuring, okay, Kitchener, they should stay near the top. But they went 2-1, but both of those wins were in shootouts against Sault Ste. Marie and Flint. I kind of treat shootouts like a tie in the power rankings. So because of that, there's just so much competition right now near the top of the power rankings that Kitchener just tumbled down to 6th. And I'm not saying this is a bad team. The Rangers, very strong. And I believe this team should be able to make a comeback here. But they're still just 3 points back of London for top spot in the Midwest Division. Although the Knights, they do have 2 games in hand. But there is the big game on Tuesday in London as the Rangers and Knights renew their rivalry at the Canada Life Place. So that one's going to be a fun one to follow. And then Friday, the Rangers are home to Owen Sound, and then they visit Niagara on Saturday. At number 5, I have the Brantford Bulldogs, who are up 1 position this week. This Bulldogs team went through Northern Ontario, and each game they looked better and better as they went, going 3-0. The game in Sudbury, Nick Lardis put up 4 goals, and that was 4 consecutive goals. So now he has 48 on this season. Right now, yes, 50 goals is in reach. Does he hit 60? That's the big question. I would not be surprised if Lardis hits 60 goals this year. And I've mentioned this before. The battle in the East Division is intense, and I think this is going to go down right to the final week. Brantford, 9-1 is their record over their last 10 games. 1 point behind Kingston for first in the division, and a point ahead of Oshawa. So not too shabby here from the Bulldogs. This week, they're home to Sudbury on Wednesday. Friday, they're home to Saginaw. And then Saturday, they visit the Windsor Spitfires in a very big matchup, as maybe that'll decide how things shape up at the top of the power rankings next week. At number 4, I have the Oshawa Generals. They're down 2 positions this week. For Oshawa, they needed extra time in both of their games last week. They won 3-2 in overtime against the Barrie Colts, and then lost 3-2 in a shootout to the Peterborough Petes. So very disappointing loss there in Peterborough. And like I said earlier, this division battle is very close right now. And the Generals falling to 3rd in the division. They're now 2 points back of Kingston for first and 1 point behind Brantford for second. So these points are huge right now, and you need to get those wins. Or like we saw this past week, Oshawa tumbling to 3rd in their division, just like that after being first for so long. Now, coming up this week, they're in Ottawa Wednesday. They're home to Ottawa Friday. And then Sunday, they host the Sioux Greyhounds. At number 3, I have the Kingston Frontenacs. They are up 2 positions this week. What a week for the Kingston Frontenacs. 3-0 on their road trip to the West Division. They outscored their opponents 20-11 over those 3 games. The offense, it's been lethal for Kingston. Jacob Battaglia during those 3 games had 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points. Gage Hayes, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And Tyler Hopkins, 5 goals, 1 assist, 6 points in 3 games of work. So the offense is fine right now for Kingston, but you got to address maybe the goals against. I know Charlie Schenkel at times has had some issues since coming over from Sault Ste. Marie, but right now they're okay with outscoring their problems, or so it seems. So we'll see how Kingston does. I'm sure they're going to try and tighten up defensively, but man, oh man, they're now first in the East Division, and we'll see if they can hold on to that, because it's a busy week ahead here for Kingston. It starts Tuesday in Barrie, so there's a battle for top spot in the Eastern Conference. Friday, they're home to Flint. Saturday, they're in Brampton. And then Sunday, they're in Owen Sound. At number 2, the London Knights. They're down 1 position this week. And with how things have been going this season, I kind of figured maybe London would just hold on to the top spot in the power rankings and that'd be it. But no, they went 1-1 last week. They had a 4-2 win over Erie, and then a 4-3 loss to the Windsor Spitfires, where the Knights had a 3-0 lead early in the second and then gave up 4 unanswered to the Spitfires. So the Knights, 8-2 over their last 10 games, and they only need 1 more point to clinch a playoff spot. They'd be the first team in the OHL to clinch a playoff spot for the 2025 postseason. But man, oh man, they've got a big game coming up Tuesday against the Kitchener Rangers. That's at home. And then Friday, they're home to the Peterborough Petes. So that leaves us with the number 1 team in the power rankings this week, and it's the Windsor Spitfires. They're up 3 positions to take that top spot. It's the first time this season I've had Windsor at number 1 in my power rankings. And for the Spitfires, they had a record of 1-1. They lost 5-1 at home to the Flint Firebirds, where I wonder if they were maybe looking ahead to their next opponent, which was, of course, the London Knights. So it was a bit of a trap game against Flint. But they came out. They gave up 3 goals to start that game against the London Knights, and then responded with 4 unanswered for the come-from-behind victory over the London Knights. And it's a huge rivalry between London and Windsor. And now for the Spitfires, give them credit. That's why I have them number 1 in the power rankings. And they're also got quite the lead in the West Division. 19 points clear of the Saginaw Spirit, who are second. Now, the only thing is, you don't want to see some bad habits develop, because it's pretty much a guarantee Windsor will finish second in the Western Conference standings, unless they can catch London, if London kind of tumbles a bit here. But it's going to be at that point where you're not going to be falling down the standings. You're going to have home ice advantage in the playoffs, so you don't want some bad habits to creep in there over the next 20 games or so going into the postseason. So this is where Greg Walters and the coaching staff, I think, are going to be working hard to make sure this team stays focused on the end goal. But still, impressive nonetheless. And for Windsor, 3 games upcoming. They're home to Saginaw Wednesday. They host Sarnia on Friday, and then a huge test on Saturday against the Brantford Bulldogs. So that's how I see it from the booth. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the surprises this past week, and what are you looking forward to next in the coming week here in the Ontario Hockey League. Again, thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you soon.